Hello, and welcome to ImpactoAZ, a podcast dedicated to centering Latinx voices on the important issues of our time. I'm your host, Jonathan Higuera, and I'm here along with co-host Juan Rodriguez. Welcome, Juan.
Hello.
Good to have you, and good to have our guest today. Today's guest is Patricia Garcia-Duarte, Executive Vice President of Chicanos Por La Causa, and a longtime advocate for affordable housing. Welcome, Patricia.
Hello, thank you for inviting.
It's our pleasure that you're here today. And I looked over your bio. I'm not going to read all the wonderful accomplishments on it. I'm just going to give our audience a taste of that. And hopefully that's going to come out during our podcast. We'll be able to mention some of those things that you've done. I know at Chicanos Por La Causa, you head up the group's home ownership initiatives. And that's why we're here today to talk about affordable housing, all things housing. And in case our guests don't know, our audience doesn't know, CPLC, Chicanos Por La Causa, is a multi-state nonprofit dedicated to a range of services, all aimed at Latinos. And they've been doing fantastic work for decades. And now they're beyond Arizona. They're in other states as well. So I know that's not where you got your start in the affordable housing area, but they said maybe you want to tell us a little bit about how you kind of guided your career, how your career took you down the path of fighting for better housing and fighting for consumer protections and community development.
Oh, well, thank you. I started my career back in 1987, so it's been a minute. And believe it or not, I started my career right out of college at Chicanos Por La Causa. So when I joined CPLC for a short period of time, I did do housing counseling for a very short period of time until my economic development specialist role opened up. There was an individual that was working at the organization, and he was getting ready to leave to Valley National Bank, and I was coming in to administer a rural development loan fund. So with a finance degree, I was able to travel Arizona and provide financing to small businesses all across the state. So I got to really know my state. I was born and raised in Arizona. In rural.
Right, you're from Yuma originally, right?
Yes, I'm from Somerton. I was born in Yuma and raised in Somerton. So it didn't take very long to, I went to a national internship training to learn everything about community development, and it was pretty intense. I learned a lot, and I had great mentors. I moved to another organization that was doing housing counseling, home buyer education, building homes. I left that organization to join another nonprofit. I was a housing developer. I learned how to acquire multifamily communities, rehab them, make them affordable. I learned how to build new construction of multifamily during that period. Then I joined the corporate world, my only corporate job. And it was about 7 years that I joined Chase. It was Bank One, Chase. I was there through the merger and learned a lot. But I always did community work. My job was to help the bank finance housing, get service for low and moderate income communities. So that was a great career. I left that to become the CEO of another nonprofit organization that teaches people how to become homeowners, teaches them how to better understand housing, did some housing development, and did mortgage lending. So those were the—
Was that Trellis?
That is Trellis. It was the build, teach, and lend. And 4 years ago, this March, I was invited to consider helping Chicanos Por La Causa expand homeownership initiatives. So one of my first things that I focused on is creating a mortgage bank. And in 2022, Chicanos Por La Causa obtained a license to do mortgage lending in Arizona, and we have been busy the last couple of years doing that. It's been a very heavy lift because after I started, March of 2022, interest rates went up 11 times within a 1 year period.
Wow.
But
Hmm.
it's hard work and it's important work. We know why we need to do this work. So that's kind of been my career. I
Yeah.
went back and forth during the Great Recession. A lot of families were struggling in a very big way. I helped lead a task force across the state, and we helped a lot of people with education, protecting them from fraud activity, and that ended me joining the Federal Reserve,
Hmm.
the council, the Consumer Advisory Council. Then I learned a lot, but gave me an opportunity to tell the governors and the chairman exactly what was happening in Arizona. Every story, I mean, tragedy, how seniors were targeted, how they were convinced to refinance their homes when you knew they couldn't afford the payment because they were in adjustable rate mortgages. Anyway, there was a lot. So my career has grown a lot in housing, uh, and I believe that if people want to become a homeowner, we have an obligation to help them reach that dream. It's become more and more difficult, and I know we're going to talk about that more, but um, housing should be a right. We should not tolerate people having to live in the streets because there's no place for them to go in this great country. That should not be an issue. So anyway, in a summary, that's my career.
That's
I came
it in
back
a
to Chicanos
nutshell, in
Por
a
La
very
Causa.
large nutshell.
Yeah, I came back where I started my career.
What a trajectory. And from listening to you go over that, it struck me how it seems like you could have probably stayed on a corporate path and not really bothered um, so much with affordable housing or low income and moderate, helping low income and moderate income people get a house. You could have probably stayed on a path, but it sounds like there's something in you that you have an affinity for trying to help these low and moderate income folks
Yeah,
get a home, stay in a home, and get in the right home that they can afford. Where does that come from? Is that from your Somerton roots, perhaps, or maybe you
that's
grew
my
up in a home?
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my story. I grew up low income, not really knowing. My parents owned their home, but they went about it in a different way. My dad worked in the fields, so he had seasonal work. And now I know that there was no way that he was going to be able to get a mortgage loan to buy a home. Instead, my mom and my dad purchased some land back in the 60s. My dad knows the trade. So over the summers, he added another room, and you could do that in rural Arizona. So in this day and age, my parents in their 80s, they would be very housing vulnerable if they
Mm,
didn't own their home because today's rents would not be within their income because they're on Social Security. So
right.
I know that growing up in a stable home contributed a lot to my success, and my passion is housing. I'm a houser.
Okay, you're a houser, and the unhoused need help, need advocates like you. But we're being told we're in a housing crisis. From my perspective, this housing crisis has been going on for a long time, actually, even though Arizona for a long time was pretty affordable compared to other areas, some other areas. But you tell me, is this crisis that we're in right now the same situation we've always been in, where we just don't have enough money to buy a home? Or is it really driven by a shortage in the supply of homes? Tell me what the root of this housing crisis is, in your opinion, and if Arizona is a microcosm of that or is an outlier in this crisis.
Great question because the numbers don't lie. I have three young adults. My children, forever and ever, I've been hearing that we're never going to be able to buy a home, and they're so upset, right? But I have to say that Arizona State University has a program, Arches, and last year they published the second publication, which has been so informative, and it gives us all a clearer picture of what really is happening. When you're in the housing space and you're working for housing, yes, I've dedicated 38 years of wanting to build more affordable housing. And why is it so difficult? And this last year and coming into this year, I'm thinking, my goodness, this work has gotten so much more difficult. It, it's just very difficult, but we can't give up because the
Mhm.
solutions are out there. So this publication that Arch has put together, one of the things that alarmed me was the fact that for the first time in history, for the first time since they've been measuring, um, Arizona's cost of living is higher than the national average. So the comments of, oh, Arizona is really affordable. Arizona is affordable. Yeah, it was for people that were selling their property in other states and then they brought it here to Arizona and bought it cash. Very affordable, but not affordable to our people, right? My work has always been with low and moderate income people. The HUD
Mhm.
definition is people that are 80% of area median income, and every year it changes. And those are the guidelines that we use. Many programs are structured to help low and moderate income people. What does that mean? 80% of area median income. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that those were the numbers. I've always worked in the space to help low and moderate income people. A lot of financial institutions um, abide by the Community Reinvestment Act. That's an old agreement. A long time ago, financial institutions were not doing good things to communities, especially communities of color. So the government stepped in and said, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. One of those things is you have to invest in the communities where you have branches, where you provide services. And thanks to the Community Reinvestment Act, the target is also low and moderate income folks.
Mhm.
So there's alignment, right? So there's programs through HUD, through the Community Reinvestment Act that have helped develop and invest in neighborhoods like the one that I grew up in. So for the first time, living here in Arizona is more expensive than the rest of the nation. And that's a big red flag.
That is a big flip from what it always had been,
Yeah,
right?
so affordability when there's a Case-Shiller index,
Mhm.
it follows the home price index. So you can look at what's happening by state and nationally. That the prices of homes have really risen. And
Right,
we have
right.
to ask ourselves, why? Why are homes, why do they
So
have to be
expensive.
so expensive? Why are rents having to be so expensive? What's caused it? Well, it used to be in the early days, in the 40s and 50s, 60s, housing developers were building homes for everybody.
Mhm.
And it was not uncommon to live in a community where all walks of life, all different professions lived in that same community. We shifted to different styles of building, and home builders stop building entry-level homes. They stop building homes that are affordable to working people. So over the years, we have built less and it's created a shortage. We've
Mhm.
had a lot of people move into the state,
Right.
and the demand has been another contributor. Then, for single family homes, after the Great Recession, after 2008, large institutional investors figured out how to make single family rental portfolios profitable. And thanks to the government, they got some aid. And now we have these large portfolios owned by Wall Street. And that
Mhm.
is what continues to contribute. So they've taken away inventory that could have been owner occupied. By the way, they used to be owner occupied, but they lost it through foreclosure. Now you have an institutional investor that picked it up, and they're not investing in our community. All that money is leaving our state,
Mhm.
and the families don't even know who they're renting from.
Yeah,
That's a whole different segment, but
yeah.
the shortage of houses, the houses taken out, so we're not building enough. And it's the solution is not just building. We need more of everything for
Well,
entry
you
level and higher middle, and the middle income people are the ones that are really suffering because there's no housing.
right, right. You answered my question. I was saying, is this simply a matter of us building our way out of this? Can we just start really putting, and I say this as an Arizonan who's watched our home building industry be the main driver of our economy in many ways. And I know we have the capacity to build many, many homes here. We have the development and the know-how. But our desert is kind of taking the brunt of that. So at some point, you have to wonder, do we really want to keep just eating through our desert parcels and turning them all into homes? But you answered my question. That's not the solution, is building our way out of this. I mean, we also have to enable people to be able to afford these homes.
Correct.
I was looking at a stat the other day. Nationally, apparently, the median age of a homeowner now has grown to 40 years old, which is a little bit
Heartbreaking.
scary. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So obviously affordability is an issue, and the amount of money that people make in their jobs and what they're doing is an issue too, I would imagine.
When you take inflation into account, people are making less.
Mm,
I read that in some, I'm not an economist, but I read that too. And I'm like, well, that kind of is disturbing. I mean, the wages for the longest time stayed really flat. We're trying, so there's multiple things that we need to do
yeah.
to to align. In my career, I can tell you, I know programs that work. So at the end of the day, we have a math problem. That's what we're dealing with. I don't have enough income to buy the price, right? So let's leave the market. I know the market is what it is, and it's harder to change it, but the value that is given to properties, it is what it is. We have to pay that price. So I have a financial gap. I ask myself this, why don't we have a national down payment and closing cost assistance program? We have them in regions and states, and they come and they go, but they're not sustainable because, they come and go. We need something consistent that can be there to help first-time home buyers get in their home. And a down payment and closing cost assistance, they vary. They could be something that is a grant that goes away over time. If they meet that criteria and they stay in the home after so much, it'll go away. If they don't
Mhm.
stay, they have to pay some of it back, or they have to pay it all back when they change title. Those are type of programs that I've seen and truly are down payment because it's not going to cost them any more for participating in that program. The
What was the
governor
name of
last
the,
year,
didn't we have an FHA, a first time homeowner assistance program though? I remember when I personally was looking for a home, I remember I
FHA
qualified for that.
is part of the government, right? It's like in the 1930s, the Federal Housing Administration, FHA, was established to help move housing, right? It was one
Mhm.
of the tools that was used to bring the economy back after the war. And FHA provides, it's a loan. People who qualify can purchase through an FHA loan, but there's other types of loans. That this is the government loan. There's VA loans. There's conventional loans. So back in the day, originally, and to this day, FHA sometimes is the best product for people to use, and sometimes is not as great. But the advantage of nonprofit organizations like Chicanos Por La Causa and others across the country. Chicanos Por La Causa was one of the first in Arizona to be credentialed as a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. And housing counselors nowadays have to pass a national test. After the Great Recession, the Dodd-Frank Act that was put in place to protect the consumer and change things around, they put new rules and regs on everybody, including nonprofits. So now our teams, if we hire a housing counselor, they have to pass this national test to be able to offer the services. So a housing counselor is really important, especially for a first-time home buyer, because the housing counselor's job is to help them understand everything about housing. If they want to become a homeowner, tell them about FHA loans, tell them about conventional loans, tell them about down payment programs, show them how to select a mortgage lender, help them understand the roles and responsibilities of a real estate agent and how to find a real estate agent, what the title company is going to be doing. It's really educating. We need people to understand what they're getting into. And we have offices in Tucson and Phoenix and in Las Vegas doing housing counseling and education.
Now, some of the things I've been reading, there was one report that said that immigrants had been playing a key role in keeping houses and buying homes, with the aging of America. I don't know, for various reasons, they said they were playing key roles in keeping the home building industry robust. Um, have you noticed that? And has there been a change with the whole crackdown that we're seeing on immigrants and the whole demonization of immigrants? Is that affecting their abilities to get a home? And how does that help? What's that doing to our home building
You
industry?
know, our country has the demographic change in the country has been changing. I forget the year, but in the near future, this country will be majority non-white. And so this has been happening for a long time. In our housing counseling education space, in our homeownership initiatives, all our programs, people who are going to borrow money, they need to have legal status. So it's not a problem. I have not seen any issues impact in home buying. Latinos have been the ones that have kept the home ownership numbers growing. So we have a
Mhm.
lot of purchasing power. Um, and there's other products out there that some people could use or have used in the past, which is using a um, individual tax ID number, ITINs. There's some
Mhm.
financial institutions with very successful portfolios that have done mortgages to people with ITINs. I don't know if that's being impacted right now. I imagine that it might be, but
Mhm.
in our world, we if someone wants to become a homeowner, we're going to tell them, what they need to do. And like I said, Latinos are the future. Latinos are the homeowners. That's the numbers are there, have been, and will continue to grow.
And don't lie, as you said earlier. The
And the
numbers don't
numbers don't
lie.
lie. Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Juan, you've been listening to this. Does anything strike you as, something you want to dig deeper into or ask a question?
Yeah, I have, and I find this fascinating. And I have spent time working in Arizona in the past. I live in northern Colorado, but I spent long periods of time working in Tucson from time to time. Um, and I always have to readjust when I go back to Tucson or to anywhere in Arizona because it's more expensive for me to live there in terms of like groceries, gasoline, the basics. You know, I remember, summer of 2024, eggs were expensive. Everybody was talking about how expensive eggs were. I could get him here at a Sprouts in Colorado for 3.99.
Interesting.
In Tucson, they were almost $7 in some places. Safeway, Sprouts. I worked with a lot of young people, and I would ask him, what are your costs, for the month? How do you get by? And a lot of them have a lot of jobs, two, three jobs at a time just to make ends meet. But my question is, how does a young person, prepare and get ready to, when they go to Chicanos Por La Causa, what do they need? What do they have to do? What's the process like when applying for a home loan?
So the first process would be to set that goal, set
Hmm.
an appointment with a housing counselor. And by the way, in Colorado, there are similar organizations that do the same thing. People can look up a housing counselor by going to the HUD website, hud.gov, and there's a list by zip code. You can find who's in your area.
Okay.
So let's say someone's in Tucson and they want to find out what to do to become a homeowner. They can call the Tucson office, they can go to our website and fill out the inquiry form, and then they'll schedule an appointment. So we're going to need to pull a credit report. It's a soft pull, meaning it's not going to impact their credit. We just want to know what's in their history. Review it with them, put a budget together, and that put an action plan. The housing counselor's going to say, okay, if you really are serious about this, this is what you're going to do. It's a customized plan. And some people are really good and disciplined, and others are not. Some take 6 months, some take 3 years, some take longer. The important thing is let's find out what we need to do. They need never sign something you don't understand, right? So start doing some savings. It's unbelievable. I have seen so many homeowners. I have stories for every day, but it takes guidance. And the first thing, don't lose hope. Media is always saying, oh, it, it demoralizes our young people. They give up. And I can tell you, we have a lot of people who have purchased despite high interest rates, high prices. When there's a will, there should be a way. It's getting harder, don't take me wrong. Um, Let me tell you, my kids, my first and second born, together last summer, they joined forces. Two siblings bought a home together. And I'm so happy. Right? One
Yeah,
alone couldn't do it, but together they joined their incomes and now they're homeowners.
that's
So
wonderful.
there's a way. We just need to kind of put a plan together, and everybody's plan is going to be a little bit different. But it's
But
investigating and researching.
Patricia, I've also heard stories about young people saying, you know what, maybe I don't need to be a homeowner. Maybe that's going to entail a lot of costs and a high mortgage, and it's really going to crimp my standard of living. And they're saying, why is it so bad to be a renter? If I can conserve my money and use it for the lifestyle choices I want to make. Many of them want to travel, for instance. Um, what would you say to someone who comes to you with that idea in their head? Because I think there's young
That's
people who
their
are thinking that.
Yeah, no, that's their choice, and we respect that. If they don't want to be a homeowner, that's fine. Um, it- what I like to share is when you're not a homeowner, when you're not paying your mortgage, you're paying someone else's. That rent, you're going to pay it and you're never going to see it again. It's providing you shelter and it's very important, and that's fine. But if you are a homeowner, eventually, if you stay in that home, there's a third of American people, maybe higher now, they own their homes already. So eventually, it's your asset and it's part of building wealth. And it's an asset that you can leave for your children or sell it and use that equity for retirement or whatever. I mean, there people do different things. People have used their equities to build businesses. So that's what you can't do when you're renting. Um, as a homeowner, you're going to start to build some wealth, assuming the market doesn't go crazy. But typically, eventually, you start to build equity because the value of the home is higher and your loan is lower. You're paying off the loan. Eventually, you're going to pay it. In a rent, that's never an option. And let's say I have to move to a different state because my job takes me somewhere else. Guess what? I can sell that home. And if the market is decent, I could probably make some money off of it that can help me move to the next state. That's the difference. And again, not everybody wants to be a homeowner, and that's totally fine. But there's advantages and disadvantages for both.
And I do think that shows up in the wealth gap that we see for so many people. I was just looking at those numbers today in preparation for this interview, and I didn't see exactly what our wealth is as Latino
That,
community compared to white, but there was a substantial
oh,
gap. Um,
it's a big
uh,
difference.
it's a big difference, and I would think home ownership accounts for a large part of
It
that,
is.
but so does retirement accounts and just in general larger incomes to put aside more
Home
money.
ownership makes the difference. Latinos and African American families, we fare really low. I mean, the gap, the difference is significant.
Now, does that always mean less for a Latino community? I mean, so you don't own your home, but maybe you're a really good saver. I don't know. Is home ownership the path to wealth? I mean, there must be
It's
other
one
paths to
thing.
wealth. Yeah.
Having a business is another way. Um,
Mhm.
it's the most typical and, in my view, the easiest, but
Mhm. And it leverages other things for you, right? You have equity in your home. A bank's more likely to give you a loan because you have some equity built up.
and
Um,
home ownership, for me, home ownership just it's a whole different ball game. I come to my home and it's my home.
Mhm.
I can paint my rooms the color I want. If I live in an HOA area, I have to abide by the HOA rules.
right.
But, if I want to invite people to stay over. I don't have to deal with landlords. If I want to have parties, um, yeah, it's freedom. Home
Yeah.
ownership is freedom, is a lifestyle where this is my kingdom and I'm gonna rest in it. I have all my belongings. I don't have to be moving. Believe it or not, renting, people who rent and have to move is super expensive. It's
Mhm.
expensive to be moving from one apartment to
Yeah.
another apartment.
First and last month's rent as deposit, for
Yeah,
example.
and it's
Yeah.
stressful, right? That
Hmm.
I have heard from so many people after they become a homeowner. Well, we want to know their stories, and that's the thing. I got tired of moving, having to move so much because every year, guess what? The rent's going to go up,
That's right. You got
and
to
a
decide whether to
mortgage is
sign that lease or not. Yeah.
Yeah, and the mortgage is a little bit more controlled, right? In a fixed income, in a fixed interest rate, the principal and the interest amounts are going to stay the same. What might vary is the taxes and the insurance. We can't
Right.
really control
Right.
that, but it's more manageable.
You
And
can
like I
plan
said, over
better.
time, you pay it off.
Exactly. Well, the other statistic I was looking at, this is for Phoenix, we have a very high eviction rate here. We hit 14%, which is way higher than the national average. I mean, I think we have a problem here just based on seeing that number. What are you guys seeing in terms of evictions and what's
It's a
going on
big
there?
problem and it continues to grow. And again, I ask, why do rents have to be so high? Life happens, things, I mean, people are losing jobs or what are the reasons? And then there's a website, Eviction Lab, I think it's called. You can see the concentration of evictions. There's landlords that take the first prize for being number one evictors.
Oh, yeah.
I bet you there's a connection with institutional investors and that attitude of and then Arizona is a very pro landlord state. Not too many protections for our residents that are renting
And our
for our
tenants.
tenants.
Mhm.
So all of those things contribute, but we have to be very worried. There's a lot of talk about housing. I appreciate the leadership that is looking at what are the policies that we need to change? What is it that we need to do? Because with all the federal funding cuts, housing, there's people out there that have been benefiting from housing because they qualify for certain programs. And those cuts are going to jeopardize the people and they're going to end up on the streets. So we have a big problem and it's going to grow if we don't do something about it. We have to
What cuts
rethink.
specifically are you thinking of? What cuts are you seeing at the federal level that are, or even the state
So
level that you are really
last year,
concerned
the
with?
federal government put together a notice of funding availability for the continuum of care. The continuum of care has funding for supportive housing programs, and there's organizations or there's communities, there's apartment communities that have people there and their rents are affordable based on their income levels. And about 70% of the federal programs help cover these expenses. Going forward, the proposal is it's pending right now. It was pulled back and it's pending. So in the meantime, these organizations that run these programs for people with special needs, supportive housing, in the meantime, there's the potential of losing all these units because the proposal from the federal government is saying we're only going to cover 30%, not 70 anymore. So we're waiting to hear what's going to happen there. It's big risk. Another example, in my department, right? I oversee housing counseling and education. October 1 was the HUD year. And we don't have any funding for housing counseling and education from HUD. We're expecting that the notice of funding is going to be available later this month, but we don't know. So and the list goes on. There's threats, right? We need consistent dollars for to build housing that's affordable to people. And many of those programs are at risk.
I see, right. And Juan, I'm going to let you go ahead, Juan. I know you've been wanting to
Sure.
ask a question.
Just I understand how it works, with the your organization and organizations like yours who provide funding opportunities for families and individuals who want to buy homes. Uh, give them an education on what the process is like, and um, I'm familiar with some organizations in the Chicago area where they work that side, but they also deal with contractors. For example, if I'm a plumber or electrician, and I work as a freelancer, I am a legal, in this case, I would be a legal resident, but I work, freelance, but I'm not bonded. You know, what they do is these organizations, they work with people from the community. They get them set up on how to be a small business. They set them up on, tell them about the bonding, and then they help them all through the process. And then they pair them with the clients from the other side who are buying houses or building houses. Is there anything like that in Arizona or elsewhere that you might know of? Because I think it's an important part of it's about keeping money in the community.
Yeah, not that I'm familiar, not with that model.
Mhm.
There is, the home builders, your traditional home builders that build. Then we try to bring resources to help families qualify, bring in the
Mhm.
financial gaps for new builders or retail for homes that have been already just being resold. Um, but I'm not familiar with the trades connecting like that. Habitat for Humanity, perhaps.
Okay.
I know they had a training program to help increase trades, but I don't know how that's coming along. There's other programs like in rural Arizona, rural communities across the country, where the families themselves build the homes. So it's called
Wow.
the self-help program. It's through rural development. And CPLC in Arizona, in Southern Arizona, we have a lot of 300 plus or so homeowners that in groups, what they do is with the supervision of a supervisor, they do most of the work. So there's another great program. That's funding for that is also being cut and reduced. So yeah, your example was specific, I'm not familiar, but there's other things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
Um, Go ahead.
well, yeah. Oh, sorry, John. Well, we were talking about the rents going up and everything else going up. Especially when it comes to housing and it's these private equity firms that are driving the prices up. Um, I call it the Portillo effect. The fast food Portillos. Uh, they were a privately held family company about 10 years ago. Then they sold themselves to a private equity for $1 billion. And they just started expanding all over the country because somebody has to make up that $1 billion difference. And when it comes to these equity companies, they got to give their investors a return on the investment. And it's the working class that are paying the return, not so much, the investors. And
And that is so true, right? Shareholders are demanding a rate
right.
of return. Don't get me wrong. When I say, why do rents have to go up? I'm not that naive. I know insurance costs are growing. The insurance is a big problem. There's other reasons why rents go up, but at the rate that they have been going is just unsustainable.
Yeah.
Unsustainable and borderline obscene in some cases.
I've never, it's the rare landlord who, when faced with demand for his unit, his or her unit, that doesn't raise the rent when the lease is up. Is
Yeah.
that human nature? Should they say, no, I make enough money, you're fine? But it seems to be kind of rare to find landlords who don't
There's some out there,
do
right?
that.
There's some
Yeah.
more conscience, more small and pop type, or organizations that are dedicated and have a
Hmm.
mission to do that,
Hmm.
to
Mhm.
stay more in the
To keep it in
affordable
a
realm.
reasonable amount. I have a question for you. David Lopez said that was telling me, I was telling him about this upcoming podcast, and he said, yeah, there's a theory out there that some have, or maybe it's backed up in science, that where you are raised, your zip code has a lot to do with your life's opportunities. That the zip code dictates resources, schools, the stability of your home would be part of that. And so getting a home is important, obviously, and owning, there's a stability to that. But also, the zip code of that home could have an impact on your life's opportunities. Does that ever come into play with what you do? I'm sure you build homes in a lot of predominantly Latino areas, which is all great to me, but sometimes I'm wondering if those areas would be under resourced otherwise. Does that ever come up with you, Patricia?
Oh, yes. The research is there. The research has proven that zip codes do determine people's lifespans. Zip codes determine who's going to go to college. I mean, the place you live has a lot to do. So yes, that is something, and by design, remember I told you about the Community Reinvestment Act,
Mm-hmm.
investing in the disinvested areas. And then there's other federal programs that say, okay, if you want this funding, you have to build it in an area that is designated. It's a low-income census tract. And it took me a while of being in this career to realize, give me money to put people in better areas because that's really what we want to do. We by design systemically, and by the way, we help people of all nationalities, all walks of life, right? It's not just Latinos. Chicanos Por La Causa did start that way, but we help people of all nationalities and race. But the issue now is we are by design pushing people in these areas that are more challenging.
More
We need to
marginalized.
invest in them. And then the flip side to that is you create an environment where eventually the residents of that community could be dislocated. They could be, so it's really tricky. We need a balance. We need to stop putting rich people here and poor people here, and the middle income now have nowhere to go. We have to design better, right? We moved into, there's a lot of conversation around zoning. Zoning is the new way to discriminate. And some municipalities are making efforts to revisit all of that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that happen based on your community. The number of trees that are in your community have a factor in your health.
Mhm.
So yes, it's true
And
that
so I'm hearing you say that redlining may technically not be going on, but redlining still goes on in in a way, right? Through
thank you for bringing
zoning.
up the term. That's what it's
Yeah.
called. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was curious about that because they used to be in the covenant of a home subdivision, or right there you cannot sell or rent to blacks or Latinos or whoever, Asians.
Asian,
But it
native.
still seems like our society is still pretty segregated in a lot of ways, whether it's schools or home subdivisions.
It's by
Um,
design,
mhm.
in my view.
Okay. I don't know if we want to speak to redlining anymore, but I know it's technically illegal to redline. So we have that at least going, right? The federal government, or you should have opportunity to redress if you feel like
Right.
you've been shut out of neighborhoods. But um, anyway, I'll leave that at that. Well, I think we're winding it down to, I've gotten a lot of good information out of this conversation. And Juan, is there anything else that you were still on your mind? Or Patricia, is there anything you felt we didn't talk about that you might want to mention?
The important thing is to keep talking housing. Let's hold our representatives accountable. We need to share our stories and let people know and figure out, get some solutions. We need to do this for our children, for the future. They, if they want to become a homeowner, they should have that opportunity. Again, there's ways that we can do it. We just need to get back to the
Well,
drawing board because it'll have an impact on Arizona's economy. It's important. Housing is crucial.
and you mentioned an interesting solution when you said we should have some sort of commission or program that helps people with first-time homeowners with down payments and closing costs. That's doesn't sound overly innovative, even though it would be if we actually got it instituted. Are there other innovative solutions out there that you are pushing or you would like to see implemented?
There's groups out there, and we have some in Arizona that are doing community land trusts where they build housing and it it's affordable because the cost of the land is not something that the buyer has to pay, but somebody has to raise the funding for the land. And so that's another way of buying and
So like a
shared
nature
equity,
conservancy type would buy the land, someone with some big deep pockets, and then
right?
turn it over?
Yeah,
Is that
to
how that
build
works?
housing and then people live within a community land trust and they can stay there. If they sell, then that home will stay affordable for somebody else. It's designed so that the affordability can stay there longer.
Oh, I
It's
see.
just different things, different ways.
Mhm.
Building more density. We love to spread around and build single family detached dwellings. It's expensive to do that, and rethinking how we build, be more like townhome style. Many groups are going that route. So yeah, there's different things that we can do. But at the end of the game, it's a math problem.
And what is that math problem? Affordability plus supply, or what is the equation of that math problem?
The gap and the resources needed to build entry-level homes.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been very eye-opening. I'm so glad to have such an informed guest on this topic. I think we need to revisit it.
Let's do it.
So thank you so much for being a guest on this. So with that, I'm going to say, if you enjoyed this show and you were excited about the information provided, please remember to like and subscribe to ImpactoAZ. We would like to continue bringing you this type of content. So with that, thank you all and have a wonderful day. And I'm going to end this call.